Cinematographers are not just photographers, they are also artists. Some are great artists responsible for stunningly beautiful imagery. Some movies belong in art galleries. Early color films were often musicals, but a 30-year period of glory began shortly after World War II, starting with Powell and Pressburger's Black Narcissus. It is the story of Anglican nuns trying to establish a convent in the Himalayas where they don't really belong, but they try to educate the populace and provide comfort and assistance to the poor. At first, the sisters dig in, gardening and conducting classes for the children. But when one of the nuns misdiagnoses a child and the child dies, the populace turn on the mission and abandon it. The plot focuses on two nuns, a lovely lass played by Deborah Kerr, fleeing from her troubled past, and a slightly deranged nun played by Kathleen Byron, eventually driven mad by her insatiable lust. The movie reaches its climax when the sexy nun orders a red dress and goes off to seduce the British hunk assigned to assist them. When that fails, she returns to the convent and decides to push Deborah Kerr off the ledge. But in the ensuing struggle, it is she who falls to her death. Cinematographer Jack Cardiff won an Oscar for his work, and it is one of the most deserving wins in Academy history. Few movies share this color palette. Even the whites are tantalizing. The imagery is so clean, it seems freshly laundered. The visuals constantly contrast the eroticism of an ancient culture with the starched purity of the nuns. Which ideology will win? It doesn't help that the only available white man is a bare-chested, classic British hunk. Eventually, nature is the true god, with an approaching monsoon driving the nuns out of the area. Watching it, it is hard to believe that the movie was shot entirely in England, with Oscar-winning art direction by Alfred Jung utilizing matte paintings and miniatures. Mostly, we see the aesthetic genius of the Archers, Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger, who made other spectacular color films as well, like The Red Shoes and The Tales of Hoffmann. It would be tempting to declare Black Narcissus as the most gorgeous movie of all time, with the exception of the next four. A lot of gay energy went into making Senzo, Luchino Visconti's epic tale of mad love set during the Italian-Austrian War in 1866. Senzo is Visconti's attempt at visual opera, grand, spectacular, and slightly unhinged. The story opens in the La Fenice Opera House in Venice during a performance of Il Trovatore. Livia is an emotionally unfulfilled countess. She is played by Alida Valli, the hysterical Italian actress and real-life baroness, blessed with the best crazy eyes in the movie business. The story begins when Livia goes to the opera and meets a cute Austrian soldier named Franz, played by yummy young Farley Granger. Visconti, a nobleman who also groomed horses, likely understood that the hottest guys usually come from the lowest classes. Livia starts running around with Franz, with enchanting Venice being the perfect backdrop for this torrid affair. When war intervenes, her husband, the old count, moves her out to the country estate for safekeeping. But Franz shows up there and sneaks into her gigantic bedchamber through a bedroom window, a trope that fuels erotic fantasies of girls everywhere. When Livia's bedroom is no longer safe for him to hide in, she moves him into the grain silo, a location that offers a genuine erotic vibe. Franz has her so spun around that when he comes up with a plan to bribe the army doctors into keeping him off the battlefield, Livia complies, giving away all of the money she was holding for her cousin, a revolutionary intent on driving the likes of Franz out of their country. Later, she realizes that the money would have saved the lives of many Italian soldiers who were underfunded in battle due to her lustful spending spree. Franz goes absent without leave from the army, and when she finally tracks him down, he's living in some dump, unshaven and hungover. She realizes at that moment that he is basically trade, just fucking her for money and power. Then he reveals the much younger, hotter girl he is currently sleeping with and throws Livia out, laughing in her rapidly aging face. Livia has had enough. She goes to Franz's commanding officer and turns him in, then walks home all teary-eyed as he is marched out in front of a firing squad. Well, that's revenge for you. The sumptuous images are the work of two cinematographers, the Italian G.R. Aldo and the Australian Robert Krasker. I'm not sure who shot what, but it is all pretty nice looking. The whole movie glows, as though it was shot on tinfoil instead of celluloid. Indeed, the colors practically tell the story. More gay aesthetics come from Russia's Sergei Parajanov. Sayat Nova was the biography of a famed poet, but watching it, you'd never know. In fact, it's hard to say what it's about. There are scenes like the flooding of the library and the drawing of the books, but there's no real story, just visual episodes, all shot in tableau. It is apparently about the survival of Armenian culture after the Turks wiped them out in 1915, and it is also a biopic about an 18th century Armenian poet who grew up in a monastery, then fell in love, and later died, beheaded by the Muslims. Most viewers find it confusing, always trying to understand and make connections. It doesn't help that even after multiple viewings, I'm not even sure which actor is playing the title character, or who any of the people on screen are supposed to be. Narrative logic is not something included here. The same actress plays about a half dozen different characters, including both the protagonist and his love interest, so forgive me for not quite figuring it out. As for the gay comment from earlier, according to film critic Tony Raines, when Parajanov attended a film festival in New York in 1988, he sat next to Allen Ginsberg and loudly pointed out all the guys in the cast with whom he had had sex. All I'm saying is, you don't shoot something like this without desiring the person being photographed. Parajanov didn't make many movies, and this one was subject to the usual Stalinist scolding and tampering. Communist Party officials condemned it as failing to educate its audience as to who Sayat Nova was, so they made him change the title to The Color of Pomegranates, which likely increased its success in North America, where small audiences recognized it for what it really is, high art. The film's cinematographer, Surin Shakbazyan, must be given credit for the film's glow. But it was Parajanov who created these setups that look like they might have come from an interior design magazine. What we have now, fully restored and canonized, is a beauty. I'm at a loss as to what might be happening narratively, but I don't care when every visual is a textbook marvel. Watching The Color of Pomegranates is a lot like wandering through an art gallery. In fact, it gives one the same peace of mind, a peace that only comes from getting lost inside great art. If there's one thing that unites these films, it's the harsh reaction from critics at the time of their release. But none so harshly than the rather dazzling and elegant Ryan's Daughter. Have coastlines ever been more lovingly depicted? The movie opens with Rosie, a pretty young village girl, losing her umbrella. We watch it drift downward, our eyes widening to appreciate the sheer magnificence of the setting. Freddie Young deservedly won his third Oscar for the film's cinematography. The story, based on Flaubert's Madame Bovary, is about a nice girl who finally marries a good man, except he sucks in bed. Once again, l'amour fou rears its ugly and dramatic head when a super handsome young British soldier, played by American actor Christopher Jones, comes to town. Jones is often cited for his lousy acting in this movie, and it didn't help that his former lover Sharon Tate was murdered during the filming. Worse, after casting him, Lean realized that the actor could not do a British accent, so he had him dubbed. In any event, the less the character says, the more mysterious and sexy he becomes. In fact, the sexually unfulfilled Rosie cannot help but succumb to his hot body. Their love scene, set in a bucolic forest right out of a production designer's greatest fantasy, is not just ravishing, it is also unexpectedly and overwhelmingly erotic. It helps that the bodies of the two actors are so perfect. Seeing this scene as a teenager, I was hooked and horny. This is what sex looked like, I concluded. One can only wish. As impeccable as this scene is, there were others that caused all the critical carping. Most significantly, the manner in which the lumpen husband, played by Robert Mitchum, discovers the infidelity. While escorting his school children on a beach, he notices two sets of footprints. Following them, he hides behind an artfully placed boulder and watches as his wife, dressed to the nines, strolls past lovingly on the arm of the British soldier. They kiss in full view of him, but they do not see him standing there. Of course, we're meant to regard the scene as his fantasy vision, not his reality, but this bit of visual poetry was too much for audiences at the time. It doesn't help that there is nothing else quite like this in the movie, so its weirdness sticks out. All this raging passion takes place in an oppressive Catholic village by a vast ocean. Lean built the entire village to his specifications, but the locals were angry that the actors playing the Irish villagers were actually British actors, so they later destroyed the standing sets, thereby robbing the remote location of the possibility of ever attracting tourists. Such is pride. As though to prove this very point, the villagers in the movie are not depicted as the most progressive or nicest of people, nor do they want the British Army telling them what to do. This being 1916, the era of the Troubles, the film's other plot is about a group of Irish rebels accumulating guns for an all-out war with the invading British. The critics, particularly Pauline Kael, went too far, ambushing Lean at a luncheon in New York. She even complained that they built too many big sets for the movie, but what movie doesn't build sets? What were the New York film critics expecting? Were they tired of this man winning Oscars? Did they need something bigger than the storm scene, which is one of the greatest achievements in movie history? Lean and his crew waited a year for the storm, preparing by setting iron rings into the rocks to secure the cast and crew during the high winds and waves. The entire cast and extras had to be on call the whole time. It was then shot with a glass disc spinning in front of the camera lens in order to keep it free of rain. There were multiple camera crews, but I could not determine if there was only one or many storms for them to shoot. I mean, if there was only one, then it is even more amazing that they got so much great footage and with consistent lighting. Kael's main carping, that the movie is miscast and that the symbolism is blatant, means little to us 50 years later. Those frames of reference are gone. We no longer laugh at the blatant symbolism because we no longer even study symbolism in school. And that's such a post-World War II thing anyway. In the end, the village condemns Rosie for both her insolence and her infidelity. They cut off her hair and they drive her and her husband out of town. So why wouldn't Rosie and her husband want to leave all these inbred assholes behind? There was a brief moment at the end when a young girl, isolated as a maverick earlier in the film, is the only person brave enough to walk outside and try to give Rosie a bouquet. She'll likely grow up to be the next Rosie. And then there is Barry Lyndon. Director Stanley Kubrick had achieved world domination with his previous movies Dr. Strangelove, 2001: A Space Odyssey, and A Clockwork Orange, all popular hits. Then he struggled to get a Napoleon biopic into production, but failed. Undaunted, he took his research and used it to adapt both Thackeray's novel of the same name and A Rake's Progress, a series of paintings by William Hogarth. The results are, I think, one of the great achievements in cinematography. Using long lenses to create a two-dimensional look, every vista of the countryside appears to be like a 17th century oil painting. John Alcott's camera work brought him an Oscar, and the innovations he and Kubrick developed changed how movies were shot from then on. Barry is robbed by highwaymen and is forced to join the army, where he distinguishes himself with his pugilistic ways. Barry befriends another soldier who protects him, but then that guy dies after Barry kisses him on the lips. Then Barry stands by a fire in a scene that looks like a painting. Actually, All these scenes look like paintings. Later, he befriends a chevalier who introduces Barry to the world of card playing, a good source of income at the time. This leads into the gorgeous interior section of the movie, where often we watch someone just walk through a gorgeous room just so we can see it. Kubrick loves his sets and he loves to show them off. Then we get the famous candlelight scenes, achieved when Kubrick borrowed a lens from Nassau and adapted it to his camera so that the candles are the sole source of light in the scene. It looks amazing, putting you right in the 16th century. Eventually, Barry's skill as a card shark allows him to come into contact with the Linden family, consisting of a decrepit rich old man, his alluring young wife, and their annoying young son, who later becomes a thorn in Barry's side. I love Marissa Berenson in this part. I don't think you could get a better actress to portray all that suppressed longing and ennui with such economy. She does almost nothing, but her face communicates everything. It's a great performance, one of the best in all of Kubrick's movies. She is a figurine, adorned and still. Audiences were flustered by the lack of dialogue, but none of it is necessary and the visuals are doing all the work. Barry ingratiates himself, but it soon becomes apparent that he has designs on the Lord's young wife.
Good evening, Mr. Barry. Have you done with my lady?
Gentlemen.
To join together.
Barry and Lady Linden marry, their wedding bathed in glorious white light, almost overwhelming. Unfortunately for both Barry and Lady Linden, the marriage is a fiasco. Barry rudely smokes in the carriage, signaling his disdain for his new wife's title and bearing. What an asshole! Her son, Lord Bullington, has a huge hate-on for Barry, and it does not help that Barry cheats on his wife rather blatantly. She hardly has the will to fight back. She develops the cold, dead stare of someone utterly defeated by life. Marisa Berenson is so good at communicating world weariness. All she wants is for her husband to fuss over her. But Barry proves to be a terrible husband, a common theme in most of these films. Cut to 10 years later. The couple have a son, who they adore. The situation climaxes when Lady Linden is performing a recital for guests, and Lord Bullington and the little boy burst in wearing big clompy shoes, destroying the mood and the music. Barry, an idiot, takes the bait. He attacks Lord Bullington in front of everyone, causing gossip and scandal for years to come. Barry has been exposed as white trash, losing his gentlemanly demeanor and also losing all of his friends in the process. And of course, the little kid dies when he falls off the horse, and the marriage ends quickly after that. Then it all comes down to another duel, the third in the movie, where Barry must face Lord Bullington. Barry could kill Lord Bullington, but he is so utterly defeated that he blows his chance. Lord Bullington isn't quite so gracious, and he shoots Barry in the leg, which must later be amputated. Barry leaves the manor and goes to stay with his mother, living out the rest of his life as a poor cripple. The movie culminates with this freeze frame, that most modern of devices, as Barry hoists himself into a carriage. This rake may have gained progress, but not stability. He could not hold on to his wealth, his station, his status, his wife, his only son. The music overwhelms the viewer with sorrow. Lady Linden sadly signs checks to pay him to stay away. Order may have been restored at the Linden Manor, but Barry's chance at being a gentleman never was to be.